it's great to see a gathering of fellow PMO junkies in one space. If I were to choose a collective noun for such a gathering, I think in the past I might have said we're a review of PMO practitioners. But in these days of artificial intelligence, machine learning and predictive analytics, I might more accurately call us a prediction of PMO analysts and practitioners. I'm sure we've all been called plenty of other things in our time. I certainly have. I'm Pip Hill, I'm founder of P2 Consulting and CEO, and previously of PIPC. I've actually never had a real job. I've always been a project and program management guy and always in consulting, so please don't hold that against me. And my claim to fame is that I saved a man's life in the Paul Himalayas some years ago. And if you have 45 minutes to an hour later, I might give you the short version of that story.
So Douglas Elliott, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm the COO at P2 Consulting. I started life as a civil engineer. I think quite a lot of engineering in our blood. Started life working in Nigeria, 4 or 5 years there, building power stations. And that's really where I picked up the craft. Pip and I started working together 30 years ago at that West Bank, and I was running a PMO and he was my lead planner. He moved on from that discipline fairly swiftly, I might add, I've got to say. I guess my uncomfortable claim to fame is that I spent my first wedding anniversary in Jamaica with Frank Bruno, rather than in London with my wife. And that was 1988. And if you look it up, try and work out why that might have been the case, and there's a prize for anybody who does. Anyway, that's me. Back to you, Pip.
Thanks, Doug. Of course, like a couple of seasoned consultants, we wouldn't start without telling you a bit about P2 Consulting. So we're one of the world's fastest growing consultancies, second fastest growing company in the UK in our first 4 years. And we aspire to, and indeed are, we believe, a challenger to the big four, certainly in the business transformation space. We've delivered a disproportionate number of some of the world's best and biggest programs, like the HBOS-Lloyds merger, where we implemented something that was endearingly termed the master PMO. So if you really want to ply your craft and get to the top of your field, if you're not running a master PMO right now, then come and talk to me. And more recently, we've delivered 2 of the biggest programs ever undertaken, including a digital transformation for a famous and very successful retailer here in the UK. But basically, what we do is we deliver stuff, whether it's high-flying digital transformation, right the way through to boring, but nonetheless really business-critical regulatory change. And Doug and I were trying to tot up over the years in both PIPC and P2 how many program management and particularly PMO assignments we've been on. And I hate to say it, but it's about 340 something, I think, where we've either been setting up a PMO, running a PMO, providing resources to a PMO, or doing PMO reviews and stuff. So we've had a lot of practical experience, and I've got to say, right now is one of the most exciting times, I think we'll all agree, for the PMO space, with the technologies available, the kind of pervasiveness of agile, and organisations want to do things quickly and more predictably. Anyway, enough of us. What you're really here to talk about and hear is the journey we've taken some of our clients on in recent years, using predictive analytics to unlock the power of the PMO and deliver change. And it's interesting to note that actually, on a number of surveys, that most organisations believe that analytics will play a massive part, big part, in the transformations of the near future. And of course, we all know that computing power has become far cheaper, algorithms far more powerful. We're all familiar with Moore's law and the exponential growth in processing power. And of course, there's more computing power in your handheld smartphone than existed in the entire world in the 1950s. And yet, with that sort of pub quiz fact, it would surprise you to know that we did a survey a couple of years ago, and about, not quite, but nearly 50% of PMOs were still using Microsoft Excel to track key milestones. So we've got a long way to go, I think, generally across the industry. Not you lot, of course, because that's why you're at the PMO conference. to harness the power of technology, much like businesses do in their day-to-day operations, and Doug's going to come on to a couple of examples. But what if we harness that technology to help us make better decisions and to give us a bit more control and predictability over programs and projects? And what if we could actually end the doomed project once and for all by using the data within? Is that me? It is you.
Does it automatically come back on? It does. Okay, so I'm sure you're all at the comfort zone presentation this morning, really interesting. What we're sharing with you, it takes us out of our comfort zone, I've got to say, and some of the end, it's still beyond what we can imagine. But this is, you're about to see a little bit where we are on this journey. So AI, machine learning, subset of AI, well established in financial services, medical companies, some consumer goods as well. And what we really want to talk about is how we're using it in projects. So the best example is financial services. They use it to spot anomalies and patterns. So we've all had our credit card denied. A few years ago, it would have been if you had gone and bought something away from your registered address. You're on a holiday somewhere and suddenly gets declined in a restaurant. It's much more sophisticated now, and that happens less frequently because the machines are learning. So what it will be now is the typical pattern they're looking for, one of the typical patterns, and the machine is looking for it. It's not the operators. This is the interesting thing. The machines are themselves looking at the data and going, spotting patterns that then result in fraud, and then the pattern emerges. And that's what we want to do with the PMO, hence the tomorrow's status report today. So what they're looking for now is one of the big trends they look for is typically when a card is stolen or cloned, there are lots of little transactions, which is tubes, self-service, etc., and they make sure the cards are not being reported, and then they go large on it. So those are the patterns they were looking for a week ago. The pattern may have moved on from then, I don't know. But we want to use that sort of, the machine, not the operator, is developing the patterns, identifying the patterns based on what they've seen and what then happens, and it allows them to look forward. So that's the sort of algorithm that we've developed with some of our teams. So if we then flick on. So intuitively, Pip's got cards, which I think might work better now I've got a mic. So we'll see there are 3 layers, and Pip will come on to it in a moment. At the moment, we're heavily onto intuition, and we know that, and this is what we do. So how many of you, and it's a small group, so and the camera's just arrived. So how many of you have been in a steering group in the last month? Okay, so fair bunch. How many of you kind of went, pretty good status reports. We've worked hard on it, and we feel that's a pretty accurate picture of status. And you can't not put your hand up there. And I'm not going to ask you this question, but kind of reflect on it a little bit, what answer you'd give if you said, how much of that is giving a pretty good picture? So we all have this terrible thing, which you've got the cutoff, and then you've got when you're going to be reporting, and you want to try and have the two as close as possible as together, but then that gives you less opportunity to create insight, etc. So that's the constant battle. You want a weekly status reporting cycle. It's kind of last Wednesday for next Monday, and all that sort of stuff. We all know that. But the question would be, when you look at that report, and you're talking about how much of it is giving a good picture of what the status was a few days ago, maybe a few weeks ago, if you're on a weekly cycle. For some really large programs, it might even be huge multi-million HS2 or something. It may even be several weeks later. How much of it is actually broadly hindsight sort of stuff? And as I say, I won't ask you a lot of hands because none of you will, and nor would I.
Yeah, but it's a good point, isn't it? Which is most PMO analysis is about the as-is state of a project at best. But we do have the technology, I've outlined the kind of examples here, we do have the technology now where even on the smallest of data sets we can start to make predictions. We can start developing conversations with our steering committees about what might happen or indeed what will happen. Now imagine turning up to a steering committee with a status report that is convinced about the future and has got some strong data to back it up. That's a very different dialogue, so there's a human change piece of that. But it does exist. We might then start to be able to anticipate the program that might go red and take evasive action to stop it going red before it's gone red. Now, of course, that's a little bit like Back to the Future, where, well, did I intervene and it then became green, or was it my intervention that did that, or was it always going to be green? So, there's that to play with. But we really do have the technology right now, and Doug will demonstrate something in a minute that's, quite eye-opening, on small data sets to be able to predict forward the status of the program, to be able to stop showstoppers happening, or even, more sophisticatedly, to apply resources to an area of a project which we predict will give us more value down the line. We might even, who knows, eradicate project failure completely. But you're going to tell me something else.
Righty-ho, a little bit more. You didn't say with P2's help, so that would be your normal salesy pitch. So for us, really, we're interested in future insight. So let's go for it. Firstly, this is what, thank you. So this is what we at P2 view as the start point. And this isn't going to change the fundamentals of this. So you'll all recognize this. There's the engine room. We need good solid data, clean data, reliable data, timely data, etc. That's a given. For us, there needs to be the level of leadership. So we like our program managers, PMO managers, broadly to be able to go toe-to-toe with the project managers and the program directors. For me, and you may well find this as well, they're quite often the de facto deputy. Program directors unavailable, kind of who chairs the steering committee. People may even want to say you're chairing it, but actually, you're the one who gets it going, gets it open, does the challenge, etc. So for me, that credibility and experience is really important. And then really the third bit, delivery assurance. What we take, and I see we have one client in the room actually, which I hadn't spotted earlier, so they've seen this in action, and hopefully they won't heckle. But for us, that assurance bit is you need to have additional horsepower, additional bandwidth within the team. Things go wrong. You need to be able to have a deployment team, a squad team that can go in, support the project manager, don't take over, help them get their mojo back, get it back up straight, and then withdraw. So that additional horsepower we think is really important. So for us, P2, that's the kind of, that is the bedrock, and that's not going anywhere. But what we're about to move into now is talking about how do you harness psychological advances, which we won't dwell into deeply, but technological advances to help empower this further.
Look, you stole my show there, Douglas, but very good, thank you. Yeah, so of course, as any good consultants, we'll be thinking about the future. And a couple of themes are emerging. One is harnessing technology and predictive analytics, automating what Doug called the engine room with bots and so forth. But advances also in psychology and behavioural science. And I won't dwell on those, partly because the brains are behind that is sat over there, not stood here. And we're trying to do two things, really, aren't we? We're trying to make decision-making far more effective and insightful, and we're trying to run an efficient organisation. And that then allows senior practitioners with experience, frees them up, instead of piling over status reports and project plans, to be far more engaged with the organisation, to be ambassadors and communicate around the organisation about the programme, what we kind of call the town hall PMO.
So, the challenges as we've gone on this journey. So some of these we've stumbled over, some have been sorted, some we're still stumbling a little bit with. So, talked about it, we need the data. It's an absolute bedrock, so I won't dwell on that, you'll know that. We're finding you don't really want to become beholden to one tool. In this world of cloud, software as a service, for me anyway, the days of implementing Clarity are gone. I'm not sure I ever did it successfully, even when it was the days of the Clarity. But I think what we're finding is some are self-developed, some you buy on monthly service charges, etc. But I think the idea of one big one is toast. I think purely focusing on the data, we've seen quite a lot of that in some of the other presentations already. I was about to say we are, you may not be. I'm kind of a data junkie, I just love it. But that's not very interesting to the client, and it's the insight that we get from it, and that's what we're about to come on to now. So make sure that you've got good data, but you elevate yourself right up to the insights, and a little bit like the storytelling we were hearing just a few moments ago. And then boil the ocean. So I wondered whether I should say this. I don't think I've ever been satisfied with with the maturity level of a PMO I've ever run. Actually, I'm always just, there's a little bit more. And then they wobble and something's going well, the wheel falls off and all the rest of it. So I wouldn't, don't go for the answer, don't go for maturity 5, etc. Just deliver a little early. I don't know what I'm going to say agile, but it's just, it fits in with the tools. Deliver little bits as you go along.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, Douglas, actually, I was never satisfied working for you in a PMO. That we even got off the ground, but that's another story. There we are. But as we mentioned earlier, we're taking our clients on the journey here from human analytics, which is kind of using our human experience to spot patterns, find out trends, make judgments, and give us some insight to the future and make decisions, right the way through to, you can imagine, using some fairly sophisticated tools across the entire enterprise, using data over months and even years that might start even informing strategy, might start improving the performance of an organisation, and certainly help us run portfolios and programs. And so what of human analytics? No prizes for this one. I mean, we do it all the time. We use our human pattern recognition machines, don't we? On a very small set of data, handful of status reports, project plan. We look at that project plan and we can instinctively sometimes think, well, there's going to be a problem on this particular work stream or this particular work stream. But actually what we're doing with our brains is we're spotting patterns, whether it's the reliability and human behaviour of a certain project manager or project team, just to kind of, looking at a set of milestones that look like they're going a little bit wobbly and making a judgment call as to what next month might look like. So that's human analytics, what we call human analytics. And it has to be backed up in stage one. What we need to do is drive better data, more quality data and availability data. And you've all probably got your own little routines. Certainly I've seen lots of them over the years. A little bit of VBA code where you run across your project plans to see whether they're complete and consistent, whether there are milestones in the past that haven't been updated, whether there are dependencies that the dependency doesn't make logical sense, and we can call those things out. Or in this example, with status reports, where they're complete, the consistency of data, whether they cover the whole of the scope of the program or project, for example. And even just measuring this gives us some insights, doesn't it, about how good a particular project team or project manager is at could they be fussed with updating their status report? Are they reliable in getting their status report in time? Those kind of little things, those patterns, inform us sometimes, subliminally, to look for warning signs and maybe mistrust what they're predicting in the future. So really the first stage is using your experience, using your brains to spot patterns and trends across a small data set, but then also trying to get the quality, consistency and availability data up. And before you do that, there really is no point, until you've got good data, there's no point thinking about predictive analytics.
Thank you. So we're then moving on, you've seen this diagram now, behavioural. So this is the behaviour of the individuals in the team. So there is no context around that. It's non-contextual, it is just the behaviour. So we will all recognise this. So you'll be going risks. So first off, your risk, quite often the mitigation date, closure date, move to control state, we'll call it what you want, the date keeps being missed. And then they wise up because you batter them, so they keep moving the date. So they get flagged up on that report. So then you start looking at how often do they get to control state, dates start moving, things like that. You start looking at how often do you get issues that appear that really should have been on the risk log? How often do you get risks that turn into issues? There are all these kind of things that we are doing that are based on the behaviour of the way the project manager performs. You've got the same about costs. They've got milestones moving, but their costs aren't moving. All this kind of stuff where you can pick up, it's the behaviour of the project manager and the project team, and you can analyse it. So if we flip on, so it has to have perhaps a marketeer as well as a very good project person. Program manager at centre, and again, you've got the visuals that come out of this. You'll recognise this again, he was just talking about dashboards. So we do this, if we flip on, let's focus in on this one. Okay, so this is milestones. The algorithms here look at the RAG status and the variability and predictability based on that, and throws up a score at the end here. So, nice. So you then here's one. It goes all the way green, nothing happens, fairly unusual, hasn't delivered yet, may just be about to go red. But that has a quite low score because there is a predictability to that is borne out by what happens. You see some of the amber ones up there, it kind of goes amber, then red, and then go green again. You'd probably go, actually, that's pretty good from the project manager. They kind of saw it coming, and then it happened, and then it recovered. Probably prefer it if it didn't go red. And then you've got higher scores here where you're going up, down, up, down. This sort of thing drives us nutty. The more vulgar amongst us will talk about the frog in a blender type thing, whereas it's all green until it isn't. And we don't like that at all. And this has a high score. So this is using the algorithm again to build on your human analytics. It's another indicator that helps you start spotting trends, where you should be applying your focus and your interest. And of course, they are linked back to different project managers, etc. So you may well find, because you can analyze these by project manager, that you've got project managers who are getting different patterns, but it's based on their behavior rather than anything else. So that's the second one that feeds in. Am I still on? Okay, the third one. So we're now into predictive analytics. So this is where it gets interesting. This gets outside the comfort zone, because up until that point, you're going, yeah, but I've got my intuition, my experience, which nobody can argue with. I've got the evidence that comes from, you've seen the milestones in front of me, and I'm using that to alert us to what's going on. With this one here, then, we're into the predictive. We're now going to start giving you tomorrow's status report today. And the way it does it, so back to the financial services, it is you need about 6 sets of data points. So if you're on weekly reporting, about 6 weeks. If you're on monthly, it takes you longer. To start getting it quite accurate. And we found after about 6 weeks, you get about a 90% accuracy of a future RAG prediction for 1 point. Now, you may go, that sounds like a really bold claim. In reality, bear in mind there are only 3 RAGs. A monkey could get 33%. They're always going to be red, and every now and then they'll be red. So it's impressive, but it's not unrealistic. So, and what happens is it's looking at the patterns which aren't defined by us. So it's not me going, I want to analyze the movement of their risk data. I want to analyze the milestone slippage data. I want to analyze the level of probability and impact they have on the risks before they become issues. It's not us defining it. It's the machine doing it. We do not know what to look for. So this is then feeding in much wider aspects around days of the week, weather, corporate history, what happens across wider programs within the corporate. It's analyzing the individuals, etc. So it's all sorts of data, and we don't know what the interesting bits are. There are obviously these standard ones, the ones you would expect, so it spots these anyway. And this is actually the strength of the predictor. So this is going, the scheduling actually is quite a weak predictor of what's going to happen to their plan, which is kind of interesting because it's scheduling. Whereas in fact, the volatility to their reporting is quite high. It's quite good. Their reports call it out, but their plans don't. Interesting. So if we then dive into, so this is for an £800 million program, real data, anonymized. Yes, good. Okay, so it's a bit late to ask myself that question. So these are milestones, and this is the weeks going along. The top row is what was reported in the status report, and the second row in the slightly hatched is both it should say actual or the predicted. So in all of these cases, and hopefully there are only 9 of them, therefore I'm allowed to claim 90%, the algorithm's got it right. So you look at the first one, you're going, it's amber. They then started predicting it's going to be green. So this is every week we're going, boom, what do we think it's going to be next week? And so you've got a pattern of us doing this. It's about 90% for one reporting period. It drops down. We can get to about 3, but the reliability falls down. So we're doing that all the time. So it gives us a track record, and it's learning. So the first one is, they think it's getting better. we thought it wasn't, and it didn't. The next one down is even more extreme. We thought it was wobbling, but they went red on it. We're going, actually, it's not as bad as you're saying, so hold your nerve. The third one down here is they went green, red, amber, green. We went, actually, you're panicking for no good reason. And we were proved to be right. And so that goes on as you come down here. And this is the one that interests us all. A lot of red, clearly in real trouble, wasn't rebaselined. But they go, we're out of trouble, and we're going, no, you're not. No, you're not at all. So this is the sort of stuff that you then add. So we've got the human, which is your intuition. We've got the predictive bit, the behavioural, which is the kind of sense of what they're doing, which is going, this is interesting. And now this is starting to go. You can sit there in your steerings going, I know that's what's being reported. That is not what we expect to happen. Let's discuss. Now that would take me well outside my comfort zone, particularly with the project manager sitting next to you. I guess you give me a heads up on this in advance. But this is £800 million program, real data, real stuff.
Yeah, really interesting, Doug, for a change. Thank you. And of course, as you can see, as we get more sophisticated, as mentioned, we can start applying this predictive analytics across entire data sets, across the organisation, across portfolios, to really kind of give us some insights to what the future might hold for an organisation, to help us devise strategy, optimise the organisation, run portfolios and programmes. But coming back to kind of how we get there, as Doug mentioned earlier, we're not big fans of one-size-fits-all, piece of software that's going to do this for you. What we typically do is we measure things like the governance maturity, how strong is the organisation at running stuff, and of course the data maturity. And as we go up across that graph, we apply different tools at different times and different techniques at different times. Some of those tools, like as Doug was indicating, Status Predict, which is our own in-house algorithms, through to the likes of Power BI and whatnot. But this myth of one software tool is going to answer all of your PMO needs, is going to also provide you predictive analytics, I don't think is, certainly in our experience, something that we've come across particularly. And so just to cap up then, to recap, the future of technology, the future of the PMO, you've got to use technology. You've got to get off your Excel spreadsheets. They have absolute uses, of course, in instances, but there are some very interesting tools and capabilities out there that can help aid decision making. Analytics will be a critical component. I mean, I've been in the field a bit long, and I remember 5 or 6 years ago the team telling me, Pip, we really got to get into Agile. I said Agile, it's going to be like Six Sigma. I said it will last 5 minutes. And so believe me, analytics is already in the change space and will be bigger and bigger in the change space. So I'd encourage you to come embrace it and see what it means for you. Beware the one-size-fits-all we talked about, and use a step-by-step approach as your PMO and your organisation matures. There are different tools to apply. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be taken in by the software salesperson that's going to try and sell you the tool. It's going to answer all your problems. It just doesn't, and it won't. And it is possible to see the future, because we used our Status Predict quite interestingly recently to tell us who the new Prime Minister is going to be. And this is what it came up with. Hang on. It did get the Wimbledon champion. No, maybe the Cricket World Cup. Maybe back to the drawing board on that one. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you.